Casey, you'll be up next. You're there. See you.
I am here.
There you are.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2021 audit. So we recently completed the June 30th, 2021 audit. I'm going to make this very brief because obviously we're talking about something that happened almost 2 years ago. So we issued the financial statements in June. Our reports were dated June 8th, so just about a month ago. In terms of the opinion on the financial statements, the town received an unmodified opinion, which means they are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or always a clean opinion, which is exactly what you want to see. We also performed an audit in accordance with the government auditing standards. So what we commonly call a yellow book audit. And here we consider the town's internal controls over the financial reporting process. So we look at all the procedures that are in place that help to make sure that the year-end balances are materially correct. We also perform tests of the town's compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. And in terms of that yellow book audit, we didn't have any material weaknesses, but we did have a significant deficiency, and that was for segregation of duties. So this is a comment that the town has had for many, many years. And of course, you got to think back to 2021. Things have kind of changed since 2021. But back then you had a deputy treasurer who essentially did many, many different functions for the town. So there's an example in our comment about how Angela reconciled the bank account, she prepared and posted journal entries, and she maintained the general ledger. Now, in a perfect world, we could take many of those different functions and give them to different employees, but that really wasn't possible back then. And what that means is that there's a greater risk of fraud and there's a greater risk of errors. And not that either have occurred, but as your auditor, I need to let you know that there's some risk there. Now, going forward, we're going to have to assess what kind of outsourcing your finance and accounting function, what that's going to look like in terms of this comment. This comment may very well go away in the next audit. We also had a few recommendations, which I briefly wanted to mention. We had a recommendation about journal entry review and approval. So during our review of journal entries, we noted that there were journal entries that didn't have an approval process. So going forward, we're recommending a secondary individual. Usually it would be Justin, it would be the town manager who would look at those journal entries and review those journal entries. We also had a comment about purchasing controls. So during our testing of controls over cash disbursements, we noted many of the items reviewed had purchase orders, which were prepared after the invoice for the good or service had already been received. Now, purchase orders are supposed to be used to show the pre-approval of transactions. And so if you're signing off on those after that transaction has already happened, it kind of negates the purpose of having purchase orders. So in the future, we're recommending that purchase orders be reviewed and approved prior to the transaction occurring. So you want to make your employees knowledgeable about that process and making sure that those occur prior to the transaction. That was pretty much all I had. Usually I would go through, kind of the numbers for the year. I briefly looked at your financial statements for 2021. You guys had a very good year. I'm not going to dive into it too much. I mean, this is at this point, we're 2 years later. So that was pretty much everything that I had. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you had.
I got a couple. Thanks for coming to the meeting with us. You mentioned before the significant deficiency is one that we've had before on the segregation of duties.
That's correct. Yeah.
So this has been an ongoing thing, and really, are we looking at a matter of staffing? We just are not a large enough municipality to be able to afford enough administrative staff to be able to segregate some of these duties.
You nailed it. Yeah. I would say 70% of my clients receive this comment year after year. And it really has to do with small staff size. Your local government in the state of Maine usually runs pretty thin. There's not 10 people in your finance office, which is kind of really what you would need in order for this comment to go away. There's certain things you can do. I mean, I think generally you guys do a pretty good pretty good job. I'm pretty familiar with Monmouth. I've done Monmouth's audit for many, many years. And I think you guys, generally have pretty good controls, but you're kind of limited in terms of the staff that you have. Again, that may all change once we start looking at, following years when you've kind of outsourced your whole finance department. And, we're gonna have to take a look and see what that looks like.
Can we talk a little bit about the numbers? Can you tell us a little bit about our undesignated fund balance? And how it changed in 2021? And how it compares to other municipalities of similar size to Monmouth?
Sure. Let me just, yeah, so your unassigned fund balance was $2,171,000 as of June 30th, 2021. I didn't calculate it, but usually we look at unassigned fund balance as a percentage of budget. We usually recommend 1 to 2 months worth of expenditures, which is 8.3 to 16.7%. I haven't done the calculation, but I bet you guys you're over that at 2.1 million. I think you guys are probably in a pretty good position in terms of your undesignated fund balance or unassigned fund balance.
Sure. And do municipalities our size run at the 8% level or the 16% level? How does that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we see everything.
Here's our concern. Our concern is that in an inflationary environment where holding cash is losing 6% a year, having a very substantial undesignated fund balance, and then not providing other services or paving or what have you, not spending it on basic, operations. We're losing a substantial amount of value if we've got too much in the undesignated fund balance. So can you give us an idea of the 8 to 16% range?
Mhm.
What's realistic? What would put the town in jeopardy? What would put, are we close to, not being able to cash flow in September? If we're at an 8% undesignated fund balance, can you give us a little information?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we see again, we in the industry generally recommend the 8 to 16%. I've seen plenty of, kind of dips in the economy where you kind of got to dip into that stuff. We saw it a lot back in 2008, 2009, when the economy kind of went sideways and people were kind of scrambling in terms of, tax revenues and stuff. Yeah, but in terms of experience, I mean, I've seen everything from negative unassigned fund balance all the way up to 25, 30%. It's kind of all over the place, and it kind of depends on how you want to manage that. There's all sorts of different theories. I mean, like what you said, I mean, I have plenty of clients who say, if we have any unassigned fund balance, we have too much because we're taking it from the taxpayers. I mean, I kind of see that argument, but then there's also the argument that what happens tomorrow if excise tax, tanks? What happens if the state kind of changes their theory on state revenue sharing? What is that going to do to our finances? I mean, it seems as though we've been on the precipice of a recession for 2 years now. Is that going to come? I have no idea. And what will that mean in terms of, additional revenues in the future? There's all sorts of things to kind of consider there.
And can you tell us a little bit about our accounts receivable? How are we doing in comparison to other municipalities in terms of uncollected taxes?
If I remember correctly, you guys have a very good collection rate. We usually tell people, I think the last time I looked at it, it was upper 90s. And that's very good. Anything over 95% is very good. Yeah, no issues there.
Okay. And then lastly, about our debt load and our debt service.
Sure.
Can you give us an idea of where we stand in comparison to other municipalities of approximately our size? Because we're not a city of Lewiston or Augusta.
Yeah,
But we're not a Wales either.
yeah. I mean, you guys have, as of June 30th, 2021, you had about 1.8 in notes and about a little bit more than $1 million in leases. I mean, that's very reasonable. I don't have the debt service numbers in front of me, but in terms of like your total debt, I mean, that's not a lot. That's not a lot. You know, it'd be a little bit different when you guys used to have a school department. I'm sure you definitely had more. You know, the school buildings can be quite expensive to replace and to maintain, so that there tends to be a lot of debt there. You guys aren't in that situation, or at least not directly. You are through the RSU. But no, your debt looks pretty good. I mean, it's very reasonable.
And our debt service in comparison to our complete budget?
Yeah, I mean, 247,000, 248,000 out of 9 million. That's really quite low. Yeah, I mean, that's very reasonable. I mean, we just do a quick, yeah, 2.7%. You know, usually anything under 5 is very good. I've lived in the city of Portland for 25 years. You want to talk about debt service? They have, it's like half their budget.
Make your head explode.
It does, yeah. It doesn't make me feel good.
So just recently, our voters approved a $200,000 withdrawal from the unassigned fund balance for the purpose of paying almost all of what we expect to be a revaluation process.
Mhm.
Does that bother you at all? Does that put us in any sort of level of concern that we've overdrawn the undesignated fund balance?
No, I don't think so. Honestly, I'm kind of missing 2 years here. I mean, I'm looking at 2021 numbers. Unless your fund balance dramatically decreased in 22 or 23, then no, I think that's totally fine. As I said, I mean, I think you guys have a very good fund balance position right now. So if you're to essentially use some of that for certain projects like a revaluation, I think that makes total sense.
Okay, so I'm being reminded by the town manager that in the following fiscal year,
600,000 out for paving, and then we took about another 100 to buy down the tax rate. We took about 700,000 out.
we reduced the undesignated fund balance by about 700,000
Okay.
in 22, so the following year. And this year, we've done 200,000. At least the voters have approved it. The executive branch hasn't necessarily, well, I guess we did approve the contract, didn't we? Have we approved the contract?
Next
yet.
meeting.
Next meeting, we're considering the contract. So since that time, we're looking at 900, a combination of $900,000 of a drawdown on the undesignated fund balance, unassigned fund balance.
Sure.
I guess, does that cause any concern?
I guess it would depend if your budgets in those fiscal years came in, if the actual revenues and expenditures for those years matched your actual budget. Meaning, let's say you budget for, $10 million in revenues, but you really got 11. So you're adding to your fund balance in that year. In the same manner, if you budget for 9 million in expenditures, but you only expend, 8 million, are you adding to fund balance in those ways? I mean, it's more than just, budgeting to use your fund balance. It's also the results of whether or not you guys had good years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're saying that our actual activity for the year matched our budget, meaning our fund balance essentially is, in terms of revenues and expenditures, is holding pat, and you're using almost $1 million of fund balance, that that's probably a pretty significant decrease in fund balance and probably would give me a little bit of heartburn. Does that make sense? I know we're talking about a lot of different variables at the same
Sure.
time for a 2-year
Sure.
period.
I think we're good.
No other questions?
I know the purchase order business has been a problem in previous years too.
We've just about done away with it at this point because of our new process for paying bills. You know, comes in May, really.
No, I didn't.
We don't use them very much anymore because of our new process. The department heads upload their invoices to Mark at his firm. So it's done like that. It's not done on those little pieces of paper anymore, really, for the most part.
Well, that makes it easier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, very
Casey.
good. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On to approval of minutes from 28th and June and the 10th of July.
I don't know if you guys have
Not the
the,
10th.
have the correct copy. I gave him a rough draft and I think that's the one he put in your packets. When I was in the office last week, there was some stuff that was missing because I couldn't understand. I missed the meeting, so I had to do it off YouTube and I couldn't understand some of the names, so I went in and fixed it. But I think he was out, so I don't know if you guys have the,
So if you want, you can just table this and I can bring you the newest version, or you can go through and make the edits of the things that she missed.
Let's table it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then on to department report. And yeah, you.
Want me to go first?
Sure, you sent a report that Justin sent to us, which was this, it was like caviar or something that to me.
Yeah.
Because it was, just what I want to know, actually.
Well, it's helpful because, we don't see where you are all the time. And if we get that little update and when people ask us questions, we can say, oh, well, he worked on that, last week or.
He
It's
sends
on
those
the
to me
agenda.
every week. So
Yeah.
if you want me to forward those to you. I'm happy
I
to
think
do
that'd be
Yes, please.
great
Okay, we'll do it.
because I
On a
think
regular basis.
one of the things we get the biggest questions on is.
What are they doing?
public
Yeah, how
works
come
stuff
now we
that-
can
How come
We
my
have-
thing isn't at the top of the list?
Yeah.
right?
I also get a report like that from the librarian, if you want hers too.
How many people ask me about the
They all
library,
send me
but-
stuff once a week, so I know.
Yes. But that's cool.
Well, it's great that he forwarded that to you all. That was the last couple of weeks. I said we'd be busy and we were. The weather cooperated as well. Yes, until last night. And everything we had on the schedule today, we scrapped to do repairs from last night's unexpected storm. We had washouts or shoulder slides, however you want to call it, on Pine Hill Road, Warren Road, Cemetery Road, Wagon Road again in a couple smaller spots. And Peace Hill Road actually had two pretty good washes across the road itself. Those were, they were previous minor washes and more just nothing too severe that we hadn't got to yet, but last night's downpours took it to the point that we had no choice but to repair the road. So that's what today's activities involved. Tomorrow is basically finishing up today's little odds and ends that didn't get completely finished up and watching the weather for what tomorrow night may bring, as they're predicting it could be severe. I've already talked to the crew that if tomorrow night materializes, that we could be coming in Friday morning to do repairs so that stuff doesn't sit through the weekend. Otherwise than that, we're working on, constantly working on equipment maintenance, transfer station, stuff as it comes up. And we're rolling right along at this point. I still got a very aggressive schedule for the next well, through Labor Day at least. And hopefully the weather will turn and cooperate. And I haven't even had a chance to mention it to Justin, but I'm shopping prices for winter sand. And seeing a sizable increase in the per yard price. Last year we paid about $9 a yard. This year we're looking at paying somewhere around $14 a yard.
How many yards we buying?
I ideally need 5,000 yards this year. I may have to cut it back to 3,500 and pray for a light winter. So didn't quite anticipate that much of an increase in winter sand price, but I guess in hindsight, maybe I should have. So I'm working estimates, talking to people, and hopefully it will be cheaper, but just as a FYI. It's not looking great. Salt did go down $4 a ton. Went from $96 a ton to $89 a ton, so it's a slight offset, but we use a lot more sand than salt, so it won't offset it now. This is the way this economy seems to be going, I guess. The only other thing I note, I've switched to 2-day-a-week trash pickup, mainly because of the waterfront park. 1 day a week just wasn't cutting it, the amount of people they have coming down there, so we're picking up trash 2 days a week now. Down there, and on the other hot spots is, that kind of accumulates more trash. We're grabbing those at the same time, so trying to alleviate that problem. But taking 2 men to do a trash run takes 2 men off of ditching or culverting, which, it hampers other projects minimally, but, you don't get 6 hours on a project, you only get 4. So just an offset, just so you're aware.
Question?
Yeah, you got anything?
You.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah. He's all done, that's all.
Oh, usually I wait for Douglas. I thought you said Dave, you have a question.
All right, well, good evening. Fire department's been relatively steady past few weeks. Most notable was a structure fire last Thursday. 3:40 in the morning, something like that, in Green, mutual aid too. Thanks for a long day, especially when you're training that. This past Saturday, several of us went whitewater rafting. You saw my weekly memo. That was quite the adventure. All made it back. Unfortunately, I saw on the news that somebody passed away on the same stretch of river a few days after.
On Monday.
Yeah, so just shows you how really bad those rapids are. Our junior firefighters, that was our annual field trip. Though some of them got banged up a little bit, they had a good time and they got a war story to tell their friends. Next year, I don't think we'll be going whitewater rafting, we'll do something else. Less,
Pickleball.
Last week, had a few members take down the horn at the center station, finally the siren, and we're gonna troubleshoot that and see if we can get it fixed, hopefully inexpensively. I know somebody was throwing around figures, it could be, if we bought a brand new one that size with all the guts and everything and the hardware to go with it, it could be $20,000-$25,000 range, so I have no interest in doing that. But Pat Smith seems to think he can get electricians to do the wind-ins or something to do with the motor, get it repaired, and we might get it back online. We've actually had several people surprisingly come up to us and say they miss hearing.
I miss that.
Yeah. So
Your children want to go to bed?
we're trying. Next week, Fire Department's gonna be attending community night out, and I won't steal Chief's thunder. I'll let him give highlights on that. We'll be there, full force, Sparky, and look forward to it. Following Saturday, not this Saturday, we have our annual barbecue. It's for all our fire department members and family members. So it's a great time, good camaraderie. So we do more than just fight fires. Another big family. Tank 85, I told Justin, at our staff meeting this week, it's on the schedule, so. I don't know if it's at the end of this month or the beginning of next month, but, Tank 85, we're having a transfer pump put on finally. It took several months, to order the pump. And that was the money that's set aside. I do our ARPA funds, 25 grand, the quote is gonna be just shy of that, so. And the last thing I got is just our golf events really shaping up. We're up to like 27 teams. We've got over 70 full sponsors, people just come out of the works to help us out. And go, thank you. It's all part of just raising money for our new endeavor, which is the Firehouse Museum 9/11 Memorial. It's like it's going to be another successful event. So we still have a few more teams available if anybody wants to play, and certainly still accepting donations. Let us know. That's all I got. Any questions? Yeah.
And can you tell us anything about the ISO rating for the town? I had someone that was asking me about it, said that things may be changing. Our rating, and if there was anything we could do to lower that rating down.
Yeah, I had reported back, a few meetings ago that somebody from ISO reached out to me and said within 6 to 8 weeks. So we're getting near that time frame that I should be hearing from any time to retest. We haven't done it in a couple of decades, probably.
Yep.
The old ISO rating was 6.9. It's changed in the last 5 years. It's now a 6 or 6X or something like that. And 6 being if you're in the hydrant district, 6X if you're outside the hydrant district. So we're going to challenge that and hopefully get us maybe into the 5s by doing this test, pumping water for so many minutes. And if you do that, then that would lower our ratings. But once we do it, we're going to have to advertise it because the insurance companies aren't just going to automatically lower your rates. You're going to homeowners will need to contact the carriers and say, hey, we heard our town just went through a rate in, and it's this rate that apply for our situation.
Right. The concern of this person was that it was going from 6 up higher. And their insurance rating was going to go up if we didn't do this testing that would give us a better rating.
That's news to me.
What I did when I moved, I reached out to Dan and he told me at the time what the rating was and, but also how close I was to the hydrant at the corner of Gray Mill Road, and
You're also.
all that,
So if you're 1,000 feet from the hydrant,
Yes.
you're considered within the hydrant.
And, then I reached out to my insurance guy and gave him that information and because, yes, I'm not on town water, but I'm close enough to the hydrant. It changed my insurance rating because of that. So you have to take the initiative to reach out to your
I
insurance
thought put
company.
in dry hydrants. It counted.
Yeah.
Proximity to a lake, does that count?
No.
Gotta be to a hydrant system.
It's gotta be a pressurized system.
So it's your intent to try to do this
Oh, yeah.
setup and make sure that it gets done to get us the best rating possible.
Better rate. Because it's surprising because the 6X already, which would be the old 9, the 10 was the highest you could go in like an unorganized township. And we were getting a 9 in a town that has a municipal fire department.
They didn't have a lot of confidence in you guys. They don't understand how things work here.
Yeah. We pump water. We got automatic mutual aid agreements, which factors into that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like a several hour process for this gentleman to come through. He's gonna go through all our trucks, our maintenance records, our pump testing. Just the paperwork side is probably 4 or 5 hours, and then we go out and actually do a performance test. Invite our mutual aid partners to bring tankers and do that's for the outside the hydrant district
Right,
test.
right.
That's something we're challenging to try to get that number low.
Yep. Good, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Executive session beginning threw me all off. I think it's hands in you. Just to let you know, in an effort to conserve paper, there is writing on the back of your page. So item number one, I've been talking about every meeting, and this will be the last time in the next 8 months, hopefully, that I'll mention number one, but Tuesday night is community night out, being held at the police department, starting at 6 o'clock. Look forward to seeing everybody there, and again, thank Donna for all her hard work on pulling this together. She's the impetus behind this, and she's the one putting in the hours for it. As we discussed at the last meeting, my concern is with obtaining another officer, and I wanted to provide you with some figures that so you can make an informed decision on moving this forward. Budget lines, 31,700 is a salaries budget. That's my budget line. Which is gonna be offset by $37,963 now that we have combined with Winthrop, and Winthrop's paying 60% of my salary. That's the savings in that line is 37 million. The overtime budget is approved at 56,258. We could use $20,169.60 out of that line. As well. On-call hours, we would need the $9,500 for the on-call hours, and the on-call hours are when an officer goes in at 2:30 in the morning. The day shift officer goes on call from 2:30 to 6, so it's 3.5 hours a day, 7 days a week that would be paying $7.50 an hour for the on-call officer to be available. So there'd be a savings in that line of $8,190. When I promoted Sergeant Westling to lieutenant, we increased his salary, so that'd be a reduction of $12,757, which is also offset because he doesn't get overtime anymore. And last year he made more in overtime than his increase in his salary this year. He agreed to it. It's a good asset to have. Part-time wages were budgeted at $51,367.20, and out of that reserve line, part-time line, Donna's salary comes out of that, as well as the Cindy's salary, who does our house cleaning over there. So there'd be a savings in that line of $7,865. And in budget line 32,720. The reason why I'm taking money out of that budget is because Andrea Orrin has resigned. She's no longer our animal control officer, and that's effective. So our officers are going to have to start handling animal complaints. That over $700 in savings in line 7110, and that's the money that was allotted for the ACO for mileage reimbursement. So the total money saved in the present budget by adding the 5th position could be as much as $76,464. $76,400.64. Cost the start of 5th officer at the 10-year pay scale is $60,217.92, and this is based on starting an officer who has what we call a blue pin, who has the academy behind him, and starting at the 10-year step. And the reason why I did that is just to have extra money in there in case we get someone who applies without having a blue pin. If someone starts who has no experience, Then that drops that figure down substantially. And also if the 60,000 is based on if they started July 1st of this year, which isn't gonna happen, so the savings there depending on how long it takes to hire an officer. So those are the figures that will affect the budget. I looked at other areas of the budget that may be of concern, like the gas line, but we were under on our gas line last year, so I have no concerns about it going over in this year's budget. Unless they go up to $4.50 a gallon, and we might have a problem, but I don't foresee that happening. Anybody have any questions on that part of it? Yes, sir.
Does that figure include their benefits package and all that?
It does not. This is just the cost
The salary?
salary for my, it doesn't take into effect anything on the administrative side.
Have any idea what?
Yeah, so probably worst case scenario, you know, if he's able to hire a 10-year blue pin, as he said, it would probably still be a little less than that total if they took a family plan health insurance. So it's right in that ballpark. I can't tell you because I didn't do it, but I could certainly bring that back if you want this as an agenda item on one of your next meetings. I can bring you that exact cost. Should be right, but it'd be right. It'd be right at the amount. Be right in that area. Wouldn't be much different.
So the officer Roy, did he move on to another job somewhere?
No, he's still working reserve for us. He's been putting in between 24 and 32 hours a pay period. His job where his full-time job has been eliminated in a restructure. So this is what he's doing right now just to make money. So whenever we call him, he says, yeah, I'll work. So we've had that resource at our.
You posted it for other applicants, though.
I haven't.
We
posted-
haven't.
I haven't
We have
posted
to
anything.
vote on,
Uh,
yeah.
I was just saying, if he were to leave and I were to post it and I got it to someone with experience, then this is what I would expect to pay to bring someone on in Monmouth.
Yep.
If Zach. Hang on a second, I'll give you some- So the starting wage scale, for step one is $24.87 an hour versus what I quoted here at 28. So that's a big difference. I mean, you're talking about a $6 spread, $4.03 spread. And you base that, stretch that over here, that's substantially lower on the $60,000.
Can we have this as an agenda item
Yes.
next time?
Absolutely.
Is Officer Wright a candidate for this or?
He would absolutely be, yes, he's been a very valuable asset to us.
And you've been through the academy?
No, he has
Yeah,
not.
so we would have
He
to,
would have to go, so we'd use it for 18 weeks at some point in the 24-25 budget.
and not have a reenactment of.
Although we don't know, Kurt will both of me.
Learning that there.
Every day on duty. And he still made it through the academy. One tough cookie right there. Other items, met with the town council and went there Monday night and they unanimously, endorsed the combination of during the chief's position, they endorsed it 100%, so. It's on to you guys now. Officer Moore just completed a course on a 2-day development course on supervisor development. She just finished it today. And our officers continue to work and train closely with the Winthrop officers in an effort to become more familiar with each other, and which adds to officer safety on the road during calls and traffic stop. And it's been working out very well, so. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
On to, select board report.
We missed Justin.
Oh,
You don't have anything?
I don't think I have any.
You go.
I have one question.
Sure.
We talked about the banners that go on the telephone poles.
Yes,
And you had mentioned Lori was.
yes, let me check on that, I forgot, man, but she was working on it, but I don't know what happened, I don't know if she ordered them or not. Let me check.
I was asked about the new law about removing items from the transfer station and when that would be effective. People can't wait to haul
Oh,
stuff
my
out of
God,
there.
my phone's been ringing. Sometime in September, it's 90 days from adjournment. And
This morning at 5 AM.
yeah, so that add 90 days to today. And that's the official date, but there are some things that we can do as a select board and as a town to make sure that we're doing we're checking all the boxes that are the requirements of the statute that's going to come into effect. And so if I'm remembering it properly, the town needs to establish some safety procedures
Post them.
and post them in at the transfer station. And as long as we are regularly enforcing those safety procedures, i.e. no dumpster diving and no climbing on piles, then if somebody were to be hurt, they would not have cause for legal action against the town.
So we want to make sure we have that done for day one
Yeah.
because they can't wait to
Absolutely.
start hauling.
Yeah, yeah. And it does sound like there's a lot of folks who want to participate in that conversation. So I would suggest that maybe we put it on as an agenda item at our next meeting or some meeting soon so that folks can know that, you know, the train is on its tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, Dan.
Yes, Dan.
I just wanted to add a comment to that when it was mentioned at the last meeting, my brain started working and I've started jotting down a draft policy. And as we get closer, I'll get it typed up more formal, get it to Justin and we can finalize it and tweak it to the statute as to what is going to work for Monmouth. So I'm already working on a draft of rules, regulations, stuff like that, just so you know.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin, I've got one unless you've got. Have we heard from the town of Litchfield about any information? I mean, you asked them for some data.
Yeah.
And I know their town manager was trying to talk to, what's the name of the company they use? Casella?
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I
trying
don't
to
know.
get some actual information from them.
I can put that, I can follow up with them and see.
Yeah, if we could nudge them a little bit, maybe you and I can triangulate on that. The other question is, have we figured out, I know that at our last meeting, you said that Eco Maine. No, that what's the disposal company? MWAC is going up $1 from $45 to $46 per ton for disposal. And that you had mentioned that Eco Maine is not really doing much with recycling other than a certain type of plastic, which is a drop in the bucket essentially. And the rest of it's either going to be disposed of in a landfill or be burned in their incinerator rather than at MWAC. Have we figured out whether there's any potential to divert some of our material to MWAC?
We'll bring that to you when we have a chance. As you know, Dan has been
Busy.
very, very busy and he's got those numbers and when he has, when he has a break, we'll bring that to you. But certainly, it is on our agenda. We talked about it at the department head meeting this week.
Yeah.
We just haven't put anything together for you to
I
consider.
mean, just for everyone to understand, it turns out a lot of our, air quotes, recycling is actually, we're paying extra transportation costs to drive it to Eco Man. And they're essentially either doing the same thing that would happen at MWAC, where we get a 50% discount essentially, but better than 50% discount.
Tipping fee.
Yeah, yeah. Or they're just putting it in a landfill.
And that's of course the concern that it would make people get out of the habit, which we've tried to train, I mean, since, I don't know, the early nineties, we trained kids at school, I know that. Recycle.
I just read an article from the National League of Cities, and they're trying to convince communities now to change that mentality, because I guess we've created an over-reliance on recycling, thinking that we're reducing waste. And then at the same time, we're not doing anything to reduce it in the first place. So we're thinking, we can use as much trash as we want as long as I put it in that blue bin. And that's not the case anymore, because it's not useful to anybody. So now they're the conversation is going to start turning to, decide the type of packaging that you want to buy, and use reusable water bottles, all that kind of thought is supposed to be the new way of thinking about the waste stream.
Have they started on the dam yet?
They've somewhat mobilized. We had our kickoff meeting. I think they're going to start next week. Is that what we're thinking?
At this point, they didn't start this Monday, so I'm assuming the 31st.
Yeah.
That was good.
And they're okay with the abutter staging?
The people's yard that they're setting up in, they have an agreement with. That's not a problem. But what we're running into is the LLC that owns the road is objecting to their crossing of their property, and they want to be indemnified from just about everything you could imagine, from the contractor hitting an individual to oil going in the lake and all this. So I've had to engage our attorney, and she's going to have to reach out, because the contractor was willing to put like 5,000 in town's checking account as an escrow to help pay for any damages they did to the road to try to pacify, and that did not work. He's got a long list of demands that he wants dealt with. I'm going to have our town attorney doesn't seem to, she's kind of skeptical of some of his concerns that they're real. So I'm going to have her reach out to him and try to explain from her perspective about why some of those aren't, he is not threatening to stop the project. He just wants this checklist sort of met. And I don't have a concern with, anybody. They have their concerns. I didn't even realize that was a private company. I thought it was a private, road association of all the people that are down there, but I guess it's not. So so they were basically saying that you're trespassing on our property, and but they don't want to stop the project at this point. So I'm hopeful that if he can just have a conversation with the town attorney, that they may be able to smooth this out. He doesn't want to stop it because he recognizes that they live down there and it's their waterfront too. Yeah. So just wanted you to know, hopefully it'll all just calm down and go away. But if it doesn't, I just want you to be aware that it could become a problem. I don't know at this point. But hopefully it won't.
Thank you.
We've already talked about this afternoon. I think Mark has probably been, Mr. Pulaski back there has inquired about our foreclosure and process and where we are. And because apparently there's a lot of interest in the piece of property that he's interested in down at the end of Wilson Pond Road. And so is there anything you can tell?
Yeah, sure. So as we discussed before, the US Supreme Court basically not invalidated the main statute, but basically everything that's similar to it. 13 states, our foreclosure statutes were basically deemed unconstitutional. So legislature has acted on it. They passed LD 101, which is a new process whereby the excess proceeds will be returned to the previous owner. MMA just recently on Monday dropped their guidance from their legal department, and they've sort of outlined a brief outline of how the law works, but there's a lot of unanswered questions. So they're cautioning whoever goes first
Mhm.
under the new law to be very careful, and they're saying that all the money should be put in escrow because the amount to be returned isn't defined very well. So we're not sure what costs we're allowed to keep versus what we have to return. The biggest change is the typical process in Maine was a sealed bid. That is no longer the case. We have to advertise this with a licensed brokerage firm for 90 days on the open market like you would any other property. So before, if you want to proceed as one of the first towns going through, I'm happy to do that, but we would have to put out an RFP first to hire a brokerage firm to represent the town over the next 12-month period or whatever we want to do, 3 years, whatever. We have to line that up first. And I'm also not sure. There may be plenty of realtors that are interested in doing this, but there may not be too, because then, that there's more money to be had selling something of some value than some of these little things. So I'm not sure how that's all gonna work out if, every town in Maine is trying to hire brokerage firms to sell foreclosed property. So that's kind of where we are. We're really nowhere. I haven't read all the guidance. I just found out this morning when I was at my meeting about the stabilization being repealed. I was giving a presentation on what that's going to look like, and Kate was there doing her little show about recent legislation, and she mentioned that their legal department just released some guidance. So I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list of things to read.
So we want to have a discussion, I mean, because otherwise we just end up sitting unless we get a brokerage firm and
Right.
end up doing nothing again.
Right.
So we have to do
And-
something.
And Kate's comment was from the new process, she suspects, or MMA Legal suspects that many towns will do just that from now on. They won't deal with this anymore because it's going to be cumbersome, and after that 90-day period goes by, then you fall back on your old process of going out to bid or whatever other process you want to create. You have to create all these rules about you have to track, all the expenses that go into, which we don't even know which ones we can include yet. Like, can you include my hourly rate for the amount of hours that I spend, filing, trying to deal with all the paperwork, dealing with the brokers. So no one really knows what they can include. So they're basically saying, put all of the money in escrow and just wait until you can figure it out. So I don't know exactly. I don't have a good answer because nobody's done it yet. We don't have an example. So I don't know. I'm not sure if we want to be the first one out or if we want to let someone like Augusta do it. But that's up to you.
What do the legal minds think?
Well, what are you saying? Put all the money in escrow? What are you talking about?
We have to return the money to the former owner, but we don't know what expenses we're allowed to keep.
Okay, so we sell the property, put all the money in escrow, figure out how much previous owners entitled.
Right.
I see.
What does the realtor do?
Sells it.
They sell it.
And get 7%.
Yeah, they get brokerage fees off it,
Right.
just like they would.
Yeah.
Any other.
Like, well, I don't know how attractive it would be.
Right, that's a question I don't know either. I don't know if there's gonna be, I'm sure somebody will do it. I just don't know whether there's gonna be a lot of interest or not. From that.
The lawyers like it.
Yeah, we gotta keep the lawyers happy, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Thank you.
Well, I think at some point, though, we have to make a decision about whether we're gonna wait a year again, or whether we're going to, wait for somebody else to do it, or what the right thing to do is, because we've done all this work to prepare, 5 properties?
Yeah.
And, but is the process worth going through? Because it also brought people in and paid their taxes once they understood that it was gonna happen. I mean.
Right, it did. We got some significant money in.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, I just don't have a good, I haven't read all the guidance yet, so I don't know, and
crystal ball saying, so.
I mean, potentially there'll be some discussion at the manager conference next month. I mean, I may be able to glean something from somebody else that's gonna try to tackle it when I'm up there. I don't know.
Well,
But the guidance just came out this week, so nobody's had a
Exactly.
chance to digest it or try to figure it out.
Where does it leave? Somebody like, who's interested like that?
It leaves us wherever you want, but
Sitting and waiting.
right, we don't have a brokerage firm. And
Yeah.
if you want me to just plow ahead with how my understanding of how the law is gonna be works, I can do that. It just, I don't know what type of risk that puts us in.
Yeah.
If we do something wrong.
Well, I think if you're gonna, if it just came out and you've got a town manager conference, I'm sure it'll be a topic of discussion
Yeah, I'm sure.
and
It's gonna,
there'll be some brainstorming and other things happening there, then bring back the information from that at the, the first meeting after your manager's conference, and you kind of give us a synopsis of what they discussed. And then,
When a mortgage is foreclosed and there's a mortgage sale. In my years of practicing law, I've seldom, if ever, seen the landowner get anything back.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
but the problem lies is a lot of these properties, there's no lien holder, they're not owned, there's no loan at the bank, like this property that Larry's interested in, it's, there's no lien on it and. the one-
and I agree with you with most foreclosures, even on the municipal level, there's that one sale that happened in Wells where they sold $1 million property and that's been haunting municipalities forever because the town pocketed a whole bunch of money in that thing. But most of the time we're selling, damaged or contaminated property that nobody want, that's the norm. Most people don't walk away from something that has some value and you can go to a bank and get money to pay your taxes, but,
Yeah,
but I just don't know.
so I think maybe, I think that's a good idea. We'll see what he gleans from the managers conference and then try to make next steps from there. Sorry, Larry, there's no easy answer. What happens when you.
We were moving down the path and
We
then
were-
they pulled the rug out.
Yeah, they did.
End of the day, I still wonder what our people had to get tax money. Next year, I said, hell, I'm not paying the taxes. What are
Exactly.
you gonna do?
Well, that's the thing. That's why we
Enough
just,
people do it.
yeah, we're all in
Pretty soon
trouble.
that 2.1
1 million.
Yeah.
Well,
Gone.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
So
We just always hope that the 98% of us continue to be honest, so. but,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
I know.
It's one of those things, the deeper you dig, the more it stinks. So I guess
Oh, yeah.
it's-
Well, hopefully we'll eventually return to it and come up with a plan.
would it help to start with finding an agent who might be interested in issuing an RFP? So we've got someone ready to go.
If you want to.
Tanner? Yeah, I think maybe we go ahead and, I mean, it's just one thing we can get out of the way while we're waiting for the dust to settle on the process. Cause I'm not of the mind we gotta, forge ahead when, there's gonna be larger municipalities that can make all the mistakes and then we can clean up in the end and not have to worry about whether we did it exactly right. But at least we can have, a relationship set up with a real estate person to represent the town. And that piece of it would be done. We can check that box now.
This particular property, there are no heirs or
Exactly.
anybody, if the money goes into escrow, there's nobody to give it to.
Right, no, and that's another problem. We don't know what to do with that money. We don't know whether we're supposed to turn it over to the unclaimed property fund. These are all questions we don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why MMA is saying, don't just put it in your checking account like it's yours, because it may not be. So
Yeah,
if you get it, just put it aside, keep track of it. Let it accumulate interest and all those things that'll have to do with it sitting there.
yeah.
Is the tax bill still running on this property?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's still,
Well,
technically, the value of the property is covering whatever the cost of taxes.
I can't say that that has been done consistently from town manager to town manager. They have asked Donna to do it differently. So some have said that when the lien foreclosed to stop billing it. And then others have asked her to continue to bill it. So I can't say that they're all in the same situation.
What do you recommend?
I would continue sending bills so that you know the total cost of what the town should have had.
Yeah, I mean, we have at least a claim over whatever
Yeah.
the proceeds might be.
Right, it should have been, yeah, exactly.
I think this one is about 13,000. Kimberly looked at it.
Back taxes.
All right, good.
Public comment? Public. Okay.
Okay.
On to consider the police chief cooperative agreement with the town of Winthrop.
You want to say anything about it, chief, or? You guys have had it in
Yeah.
front of you, so I don't know if you need us to say anything, but if you have any questions, I
In
guess.
favor of it, so I don't.
Yeah.
You know, what all of us are.
Since there are many more criminals in Winthrop than Martin, shouldn't they be paying more than 60%?
You don't want to know what's funny about that is we went through, I don't know if I should say this one. So their attorney went through and left all their comments on it and she kept saying, I think 60% is too much. He already works for Monmouth. I don't think that Winthrop should be giving him a car. Like all these things were down there, but then they just said, but it's up to you. And Anthony, he agreed with what we came up with. So
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
So their attorney felt differently, Joe.
Yeah. I make a motion, we approve the cooperative agreement for the police chief's contract with the town of Winthrop.
Second.
So the motion by Chris, second by Kent to approve the police chief cooperative agreement with the town of Winthrop.
Well, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask. Now, the agreement calls for Winthrop's going to provide a cruiser for us for it'll be jointly used. And we're going to pay for the gas,
Gas and maintenance, and then providing the cruiser.
and they're figuring that's sort of a balance, that balances out.
That's what I threw out there, because when I first started working as interim, that they provided me with the car and they said, well, how are we gonna rectify this? I said, we'll pay for the gas and maintenance if you provide the cruiser and that's fair, so that's why terminology is in the contracts like that.
So you'll drive around Monmouth with a car that says Winthrop Police Department?
No, it's
not
not.
marked.
It's an unmarked.
Yeah.
Chief.
It is cheap.
It says chief on it.
No, it says nothing.
It's gonna say nothing.
And when that vehicle needs replacing, it'll
Then
be
we're
bigger.
going to have to address that again.
Yeah.
Is this a brand new vehicle or?
It's a 2019.
I see.
It's only got 42,000 miles on
Straight than what we had.
it.
Yes.
Yes. Much better.
Anything else?
I have nothing further.
So all those in favor?
But that brought up something I didn't ask you during your time there, so. So your old car that was out there and I noticed it's back next to the station. Have you had a?
They picked it up yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The people from Massachusetts that buy them or the sealed bid?
It was by bid, local couple bought it for their son who's in high school.
Oh, okay.
I did tell the young man that every police officer in Central Maine recognizes that car. So they know it's no longer a police cruiser. Another thank you for telling me.
Is the local guy from Monmouth?
Yes.
Yes.
That's why Dave was always so happy driving the old cruiser.
When
was the worst car for a codes officer to drive, was an old police car. Because you're in a hurry to get to do an inspection and they're doing 10, 15 miles under the speed.
Next is, consider the reappointment of David Mills to the planning board.
Can we take these as three together if anybody doesn't have any
If you
discussion?
want to, sure.
No, because on.
You can.
Oh, you have to
Number-
abstain, that's
I'm
right.
gonna recuse on.
Yeah, okay.
item 10.
Okay, so
I make a motion, we reappoint David Mills to the planning board.
I'll second that.
A motion by Ken, second by Chris to reappoint David Mills to the planning board. All those in favor? Next is to consider the reappointment of Stephen O'Donnell to the planning board.
I make a motion, we reappoint Stephen O'Donnell to the planning board.
I'll second that.
So again, a motion by Kent, second by Chris to reappoint Stephen O'Donnell to the planning board, and Joe will stay.
Correct, I won't vote.
All those in favor? And then to reappoint Richard Grant to the planning board.
Yep, and I just wanted to point out, just so you know, he's asking to become a full-time member. He was an alternate. John Lewandowski did not get his application in to me until today. We didn't know if he was going to apply, but he does have an application on my desk, so you'll have to make that. He would be essentially taking his full-time slot if you wanted to do that. Does that make sense?
Lewandowski.
Yeah.
or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are two candidates for the permanent position.
He is asking to be made a permanent position. He's currently an alternate. There's room for an alternate. So basically, you'd be swapping them if you want to make him a full-time member. You'd be making a current full-time member an alternate and making an alternate full-time, if you want to do it that way. Or you could reappoint him as an alternate. It's up to you.
What is his position, Lewandowski's position?
He's a full-time member of the planning board
And
right
is he
now.
willing to become an alternate?
I don't, it's not what he applied for.
There's only one vacancy then, after these other.
There's two, there's an alternate and with what we have and there's an application that didn't come in on time. If they were all here, they'd fill all the slots, but because his was late, I don't have it in front of you, but there's two. Just pointed those two. So right now there's two vacancies. There's an alternate and a full-time member. Richard Grant is currently an alternate. He's asking to become a full-time member.
And
So
I think that if Rick Grant wants to become a full-time member and he got his application in on time and I queried about attendance and because we had some quorums not happening, so.
I just want to put something in because I'm also the planning board secretary, that Richard Grant is at every single meeting.
Yes.
And I just met this other fellow the first time. He doesn't attend on Zoom or whatever.
That's why I asked the questions that I
Yeah.
did
So, yeah,
prior to considering these. I
Yeah.
wanted to know who had been attending and had a positive response about Rick. So,
my understanding is that he normally works on Thursday nights, so it's hard for him to attend.
so it's
Yeah.
John Davinsky, right? Not Larry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Because I was like,
I used to work with
Lewandowski.
Well,
Well, that's also our-
State, so I
Well,
just.
so it was Davinsky.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's because that was the concern for me. So I
What's his
am
name?
Davinsky,
Davinsky?
Davinsky.
Okay.
So,
The rescue chief.
Yeah.
I rattled off the director of
Yes.
the audit division at Maine, that's what I did.
and he's also that's why I was like, wow, that's strange, because he's the architect on the academy.
No,
All right,
Apologize.
but I'm very much for having Rick on there as a full member. For the reason that he's come to the meetings, so. That's where I am with that. Having him.
okay.
So. you may-
I make a motion to approve Rick as the
Full-time.
full-time member of the planning board.
Second. So that was a motion by Chris, second by Mark to appoint Richard Grant to, as a full-time member of the planning board. All those in favor?
Are you
But we're
opposed,
not
Joe?
gonna,
I'm gonna abstain.
you're,
Okay, okay.
perfect.
Five,
So Lewandowski will, I mean, now the.
Yeah, you're done.
Lewandowski next time.
Yes.
Then to consider a catering, this is a catering application from rustic taps and catering. And this was already,
It's a retroactive.
Yes,
Right, you're codifying what you already did.
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
So. Motion,
Oh, I make a motion, we approve the catering application from last Saturday of Rustic Cat Taps and Catering.
And I'll second. That's all you already said.
You already signed it and I was driving down the
I
turnpike.
kind of have to vote for it.
But now
Don't do that to
Lori
me.
has your phone number, Kim, so you're in trouble.
Chris made a motion.
Yes, it was.
And Mark seconded it to approve the catering application for rustic taps and catering. All those in favor? Thank you. And we're going to table the town beach fees.
Well, I just wanted to mention that from the information that we discussed before, it made it sound like there'd been a warrant or a discussion or whatever. That never happened. It had been discussed at a few different select board meetings. And Lori found some of the minutes for me and I found some more minutes, but it had been a topic of discussion. But at every single one, what Harold Jones, former select board member, had said is we need to have a public hearing about this. And that never happened because then COVID happened and each time it was discussed, it was never brought any further than that. And, there was some dollar amounts with these minutes from September 25th of 2019. And they talked about seasonal passes and some different things like that. And, I think that I would like to come up with a way that if people want to have a season pass and have some sort of sticker system, money doesn't have to change hands and things like that at the beach, and put, kids that, or anybody, in the part of responsible handling money and double counting at the end of the day to make sure your receipts, and that type of thing. I would like to not have to put people in that position. So, and I think there's some work to be done on this to come up with some numbers in different ways that people could purchase them online or, what the numbers would be. So.
Should we have some kind of a public hearing, maybe at the end of the season, September? And get something figured out for the warrant in November, let people vote on it?
Have we already voted on this?
No, because I asked Lori to look. Nothing has been voted on. It's been discussed at 2 different select board meetings. And then they kept bringing it, every time Harold said we need to have a public hearing on this, and it never happened.
Well, we need to have, we're not authorized to do it if the voters haven't authorized to do it. Authorized us to do it.
Yes, exactly. So,
Sounds like there's a bunch of townspeople that are opposed to it. They don't want people from out of town coming here, so we should give them a chance to come speak out on it.
Of course.
did we approve the temporary arrangement, didn't we, at our last meeting?
We approved the temporary arrangement, and it probably would be a good idea if we had a, you know, a recap of that to see how it went,
Yeah,
how it's gone, and it's kind of, you know, our get some feedback on whether, you know, from townsfolk and also the beach personnel to tell us, you know, how it's gone and
have they been turning
Kinda
money into
Surprised
it?
they're not
Yes.
here
They
tonight.
have turned,
My thought was because the season is kind of almost
Yes.
over, to just kind of let it run its course, get feedback, and then if you want to take it to the voters in November or next, you know, whenever it is, you guys, you'd have time in the off season to kind of.
Yes.
Let it run its course in what way?
Well, I mean, you can reverse yourselves right now if you want to, but I told Lisa and her crew that you weren't going to be making any big decisions on this tonight, so they're not here.
so the beach season ends when?
Labor Day.
Labor Day.
Labor
Yeah,
Day, I mean,
Basically when
the,
school starts.
Yeah.
Four.
but the lessons and all of that, they pretty much are done
Yeah,
now,
that's-
right?
yeah.
So
That's
it's
why I'm
never,
There's another round of lessons starting next Monday.
Oh, okay.
For 2 weeks, yeah.
okay.
So that'll take you right, yeah.
You,
So I'd echo just exactly what the town manager said about let it run through the season. And unless the police have had some sort of strange, you know, jacked up amount of calls I'm receiving. Or if the folks that aren't even here tonight, that I'm surprised aren't, if they're not coming in and saying, hey, this isn't working. So we're not getting anything negative. Let's let the process play out and see, then you have some real criteria for most of an actual season. To say, do we really want to do this or not? If you pull it now, you've just dipped your toe in the water, pulled it back out. So,
And
no pun intended.
My concern about letting it continue for the rest of the summer is word of mouth and uptick of people who are coming in from out of town. Once they get established, the idea that it is, then having to start the process over again next year. Like, wait a minute, last summer I got to come. How come you're letting me in? It was $5, it was $20 for my car. What are you telling me? And then you have more situation of confrontation. And you might have gonna have that already, having it the last 2 weeks, you may have already had people who are getting accustomed to it and will be coming in, you have to tell them, so it's whether you tell them 2 weeks now, or you have from now until, even though the beach closes, people are still coming, and then they come. As you all know where I live, you know, up in Scott and Jack go until October, when they lake freezes. So we see how many people are coming and use it, and most of you people out of the season are not from town necessarily. Doesn't, you know, we don't recognize a lot of them come use it a lot because there's nobody there to tell them not to, for the reason.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, it's not-
it's really, you're right, you can do it from now, but you're gonna have to either delay it for next year, having to tell everybody, or you're gonna delay it.
And it was brought to my attention, I mean, at one point, we did let anybody use the beach. And it became a big problem, and that's when we changed it, so it was residents only. And we did that for a reason. Because there was issues. So,
That was one of the small blessings of COVID, is when we had not had people in there, and how it went from, having some other problems too. You knew everybody that was there. You know, spoke to somebody's kid, you knew who the kid was. You hear now, try to talk to somebody's kid, still talk to my kid. We can say something, you know, well, because if it's filthy mouth, and they're not following the rules and they're throwing rocks. And a lot of times it does fall on the parents because of the young person.
It's a different environment down there though, than what we remember years ago.
Oh, yeah.
It's like lowering the speed limit. If you want to change the speed limit on a road, well, then it's not the same anymore.
Yeah.
So. I mean, fundamentally, I start out by thinking selfishly, and I try not to do that. So again, there's a car town beach, why let anybody else in? But then, is it, maybe we can get some revenue, and when we're talking about all the things that we're saying no to. That's a way to create something back in, so we maybe say yes a little more, so I'm on the fence, actually, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I like to learn a little more about it, and I think to make an informed decision. Go back to what the town manager said, it's just, if I'm gonna say no, I wanna know why I'm saying no. And I don't feel like I have enough,
good issue for a public hearing and get
yes,
everybody's
exactly,
input.
that's probably the best. Right there, exactly.
And then let people decide.
I think the safety issue of
Yeah.
lifeguard having to, a youth lifeguard having to enforce, you know, somebody that should not be there and then having a confrontation. That's a safety issue. And they spoke about it at the last meeting. And it turned so many cars away, and then, you know, somebody takes issue with it and it escalates. Right. You know.
Mr.
Yeah.
Shaw?
I agree. I sort of agree with Kent. You guys made a decision on information that you thought you had, that a public hearing was made. And now you find out that a public hearing was not made. You can't authorize any collection or expenditures of money without public a vote for it. So you almost have to reverse yourself because you approved it based on false information. That you rightly understood that was correct, but found out it wasn't. I mean, every other board would do the same thing, you know, planning board, board of appeals would have to reverse themselves if the information given to them was erroneous.
Not correct.
I wasn't here last meeting. I did watch it in detail. Go over what was said after I found out what had passed. I think that the people coming in, and the confrontation had more to do with the staffing issue. The young man who's at the gate most of the time, he's a fine young man. He is, I would guess, his first job out. I kind of know him somewhat from school. He has no business, in my opinion, dealing directly with the public as a first time out. He doesn't, a lot of interaction, you know, he knows me from school and I can't get him to say boo to me. You know, I've gone through, I go every single day and he still stops me and I'm like, it's me, it's my car. I've lived here 13 years, you know my kids. And, you know, to me, and I know it's hard to get kids and it's hard to get workers right now. So they have somebody who's there, he's like a nice guy. He has no business being there, especially if you get somebody who's going to be confrontational. My worry is, if you don't have some sort of a stopgap or letting people in, the same people who come in, you get somebody there, are they then confrontational on the beach where you do have some more kids, more people, lifeguards, more young people that then have to get pulled versus, you know, you need to go out. You know, you might want to consider putting like GoPro ring, whatever they call a camera with sign that says, if you act like a jerk, you're on film and the police will follow you. We have your license plate. You know, this is where you go. You're not welcome. It's on the presence only or it's season past, whatever you decide to do, what the town decides to do. I don't want to give away to the decision of the waterfront director of doing this. I mean, she knows how to staff or probably did what she could, but I think that's a lot of what's happening there is the person just doesn't know how to. He's a young guy. You're not going to stand up to. Have an attitude.
I wondered how, you know, when I was a kid, I rode my bike up there. It wasn't like I carried a wallet with any identification that said I lived in town. So if I decided one day that I wanted to ride my bicycle or walk to the beach, because I'm a half a mile away and I don't have any identification and I'm not in my car with the registration, are they gonna let me in?
Yeah. If you rode your bike and you walk, so it's kind of understood.
Well, I could ride my bike from anywhere, you know, I could be on, you know, so that's the other part of it. I wonder how do you handle that if it's a kid?
If you drove your bike, rode your bike, Louis, you deserve to go.
You should. So, but I stopped and thought about that, because that's all we ever did as a kid, is we rode our bike every afternoon up to the beach, so.
What are we gonna do?
I mean, if we really didn't have authority, what's your recommendation on that, on what Dave said, if
We go
we
back to
do-
the, no, nobody except for Falmouth residents.
I mean-
That's the default position.
Or do we just not collect a fee because we're not authorized to be collecting funds? We could
Yeah.
I
still
think it's two
say,
separate issues.
we could
Yeah.
still let people from out of town come in
exactly.
if that's our.
That would give you at least a little test thing to go, a little test period to go by.
That's your route.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just not collect the fee.
You're gonna have
It's not-
people next year than saying, I was for last year, and I didn't have to pay anything. What do you
Well-
mean?
Well, that was last year.
Welcome to 2024.
Same thing, just like fees for things go up, you know, registrations and fees. And if we're, yeah,
It's better to explain that. It
exactly,
was free last year, but this year we decided that, yeah,
yeah, exactly.
than to reverse it the other way around.
So what I'm hearing is there's two questions here. One is the authority to collect the fee, and then the other is to restrict to residents or non-residents.
Yes.
Wait a
You're also
minute,
gonna still need to-
we set a fee on the town recycling center.
You have an authorization from town meeting to set those
Yeah,
fees.
we got no authorization.
Apparently not.
That's what we're being told.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't have the authority, but do we have the authority to say residents or not residents?
Yes, because I don't think there's an ordinance that decided that.
Yeah.
To my knowledge.
I have the ordinance and I read through it,
doesn't
and
say
it
that,
doesn't
right?
say
That was
that,
just the-
so, because that's the other thing I did is I printed that out.
I knew that we don't collect fees from out of town. They're allowed to use it. And we don't collect fees until we establish a policy. Yes.
I just want to also say that not collecting fees, but you also need to make sure about the whole expenditures for Monmouth residents, not collecting fees to show up. Because from that last meeting, a lot of it was parking lot empty. We've also had like the rainiest summer in 25 years. Since then, that's changed and it's much busier now, which times it is packed out now.
Leave it at the discretion of the each staff when they could allow people in if the parking lot warrants it, or
That's
they could still refuse people
Yeah.
if. Yeah, they have the discretion to still refuse people if the beach is full.
Yes,
You mean residents as well?
or hold spaces for residents as
Well,
opposed.
if they
for
park on the
others.
road and walk in.
Well, exactly. The-
But if they park at the boat launch, you walk up.
Or exactly, or park down at the parking lot at the railroad depot, I mean, and walk over, so. Bunch of places they can park. So,
Well,
It's
I
gonna
think,
be really hard to go now back and say,
Yeah.
no, you can't come now.
yeah, I
It's
think.
easy to say you don't have to pay the fee, but it's
Yeah.
really hard to say you can't come for the rest
sorry.
of the
part of
summer.
the-
alarm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know for you and how I felt about their point is it's not just about the money, it's also about putting people in harm's way when they have to say no. And it's difficult for a young seasonal person to, be in the position of enforcement.
And if we have a, public hearing goes to the voters and they decide whether or not we do this, I mean, then next year, if they decide if the vote is not to allow out of town people at the beach, then we'll have signs made that are specific and on the road saying,
This
this is the, yeah.
No
So-
foreigners.
Oh, my
So
God.
we'll be
So-
at the point this year where they won't have to have an attendant at the end of the driveway.
That's the thing is if you have to have an intent. So my concern is, I mean, I walk, then I drop the kids off, but what happens when you have somebody who's driven in the town resident and they're like, well, why it's so packed? And they figure out that the parking lot is packed with out of town people who didn't pay. And they wanted to use the beach that they paid their taxes for and be able to use the last however many years. That's going to be a real problem. Especially on a really, really hot day.
I just think back to the people that they were here that founded the beach. It used to be a swamp.
Yeah.
It's all filled here. It was all cattails and water. I think it was Lee Davis and Earl Flanders that somehow found the.
Magically.
Yeah, well,
Transformed it.
I didn't wheeze anyway, on the other side, so.
Then it was, I think, my mom was part of some mothers club, Carolyn Allen, a whole bunch of them. It was the mothers club that made that all happen. And if all those ladies were here and Earl and Lee, what would they say? Nobody gets to go other than townspeople? Might say, let's give this a try. I guess I'm thinking back to those generous people. Maybe they would at least be open for a few more weeks to try this.
Well, I made a motion.
I'll second the motion on the table with a friendly amendment that says we'll give some discretion to the town staff. Which they probably already have to do some crowd control. If it gets too full and.
I would think if the director has a sincere concern for her staff or the attendees, their number one townspeople, that she would say, call up here and say, this got in now, and we would do that immediately.
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I
And
don't
also-
know if it's possible to, just quickly laminate some sheets that have where there is parking spots, whether it says Monmouth residents, I mean, the Rocks, they used to have lifeguards. You know, different things painted on them, whether or not, and they could somehow put, you know, Monmouth resident parking or something like that to make sure that spaces.
Challenge to enforce.
Oh, I know it would be, like anything would be, you know, so there's no way to.
Are you folks gonna have a dialogue with, director maybe?
Well, I
Well,
think
that
that we need to have the waterfront director and the rec director here and come back and give us a shakedown of what happened.
So
Well, are we gonna tell them to stop collecting the money?
I think that's what your vote is, yes.
Your motion has been seconded.
you, Doug.
So,
Well, wait, there's a friendly amendment. I have to consent. Oh, yeah. I don't want to consent. I don't think we should. It's arbitrary and capricious to say, you can come in and you can't come in and you, no. I think we shouldn't do that.
Oh, man. He's like,
Stickers all over.
all right. I withdraw my friendly amendment and just second your motion.
All right.
so you, what's exactly what is,
My motion was stop collecting fees from non-residents and do not impede their use of the facility.
For the duration of this season.
Right.
On a trial and temporary basis.
okay, all those in favor of Joe's? Ken seconded it, right?
Yeah.
And Joe made a motion to stop collecting fees of each. All those in favor? All those opposed?
I think they should,
And,
I think they should be collecting fees.
I think so.
And I
Continue
think,
with what they're doing.
yeah, I think we should invite the staff for the next meeting, just so we can.
Yeah, I actually told them not to come because I had kind of spoken to enough of you individuals. I thought it was gonna get tabled, so I told her not to come here tonight.
Yeah,
I didn't
well,
think you were gonna.
yeah.
So that's my fault that she's not here. It's not
No,
because she didn't want to be here. She was planning on being here, but I didn't think you were gonna discuss it, so.
Yeah,
Well,
but I think
yeah.
we just will have more information, you know, in another 2 weeks, we'll be at the end of the. You know, lesson season and have some information that, you know, and then come up with a plan to move forward. Because
Yeah,
we've got to do it the right way, so.
well, it's already been voted on, but it just seems to me that if we're not authorized to collect fees, we shouldn't do it.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I apologize if I contributed to the confusion, because I thought we had a warrant item that said we were authorized to do it. So my bad.
Then on to consider a property tax abatement for the 15 Blue Rock Road.
I move that we approve the abatement.
Second.
So the motion, there's a motion by Joe and a second by Kent to approve the property tax abatement for 15 Blue Rock Road. All those in favor? Thank you. And
If you just want to do those agenda items together, he mixes them on one document, so it's easier because he just divides it out himself, but he doesn't separate them into years, so if you just want to do them all at once, that's fine.
sure, yes. Go.
Allegiance Trucks, vehicle repairs, $1,375. I have a bunch of lease payments here, but he didn't put down which ones they were for, so I apologize for that. I'll try to get that. And I just got it tonight, so I didn't have time to write it down on my piece of paper. Androscoggin Bank, 15,570. Androscoggin Bank, 14,036. Androscoggin Bank, 16,321. Bergeron Protective Clothing says Fire Department, 1,794. Gary Talbot Royer, $6,375.40. Blue Rock Earthworks, Materials Transport, $2,564. Calderwood Engineering, pre-engineering work for the Cocknoagan Dam, $4,000. Obviously Watershed District, first assessment, $18,564. Obviously Lake Association, $4,000.
That's for boat inspection or something?
Yeah. PJ's Municipal Supply, patch material, asphalt, $1,580. Public Works, same company, Public Works mulch and gloves, $2,945. Du Bois and King, North Monmouth Water, $1,050. GDI Services, the janitorial service, $3,118. Gov Office, our website hosting, $4,995. Thermal Industries, transfer station tipping, waste disposal, $5,382. Harris Computer Systems is our main system for the town office, $13,580. Jensen Baird, our attorney, $1,311. KV Cog, $6,849. Maine Municipal Association, Property and Casualty, $26,559. Maine Municipal Association, Workers' Comp, $7,077. Maine Recreation and Design, the playground installation at the beach, $4,110. Manchester Motors, a tractor, I think that's the one that Dennis bought for Compton Hall, $3,895. Monmouth Water Association, hydrant fees, $29,169. Told you it was a long one. Dickerson and O'Day Academy Hall expenditures, $41,162. Hall Designs Project, former Monmouth Academy, again, $3,900. Power Plan, transmission, $2,011.49, Public Works. Page 1. St. Laurent and Sons Excavation, 3/4 asphalt reclaim, $2,149. State of Maine Bureau of Motor Vehicles, $7,057.50. P. Burnham Landscape and Construction, shrub removal, mulch, fabric, and labor, $1,225. Vortex Services, this is the sewer line for up here at the Academy project, $1,860. Bill Van Tynen, CMP valuations, $1,200. And Winthrop Police Department for Public Safety Dispatch Services, $33,028. And for a grand total of $301,422.80.
I make a motion, we approve fiscal year 22-23 warrant 28 and fiscal year 23-24 warrant number 1.
Chris made a motion and Ken seconded it to approve the two warrants that were read. All those in favor?
Make the motion, we adjourn.
All those in favor?